Gather your crew, because it's time for some volleyball at the card pool. I'm your host, Stu.
And I'm Kyle.
And today we are looking at the money card section that we found in Weatherlight.
This is part 3 of our multi-part set review of Weatherlight. You can, of course, take a look back at the last 2 segments where we discussed the hidden gems. And next week, we're going to be giving our overall review of the set. But this week, without further ado, let's move on to these money cards.
Indeed, and let's start off with the creme de la creme. Most expensive card in its arsenal, number 1. And Kyle, I insist, after you.
All right, I will do that. Number 1 for the set at $35 is Null Rod. And this is an artifact that costs 2 colorless to cast. Players cannot play any artifact abilities requiring an activation cost. So right there, that rules out a whole bunch of abilities that can't be played. So anything that's like an enters the battlefield effect, that's still fair game. But for the most part, artifacts don't do those. Artifacts do activated abilities that require some kind of tap effect or paying mana or paying life or something like that to activate. And any of those, as long as Null Rod is in play, are completely out.
But the ETB ones still do exist. I mean, you have a classic card like Duplicant, which is something when it enters, it has something else happened. But, or, I mean, just being able to shut off a Nevinyrral's Disc. Like, they play it on, like, turn 3 or 4, and they're feeling all like, yeah, no one's going to do anything. And you're like, nope. Literally, it says nope. This is nope the card. Almost.
Exactly, yeah. And the reason this is so valuable is because it's never been reprinted. That, of course, is always kind of a big deal. But also, this is a very sought-after card because it's a sideboard card in a lot of like vintage and legacy decks. Because this way, you stop the really like broken, cheap artifacts like Lotus Petals and all that stuff from being played. So it's kind of a must-have in those formats.
It shuts off a Soul Ring too, so like right there, like being able to cut off someone's mana like that, devastating. And the best part about it, I think, is almost like the conversation in the flavor text, because it sounds like half the conversations you and I have, which is just great. And I'm going to read it real fast. It's like, Gerard, but it doesn't do anything. And then you would say to me, like...
No, it does nothing.
Yeah, it's like half the conversations we normally have with each other, which is just archaic BS. But
I wouldn't, necessarily play this in every single deck ever. I wouldn't probably even consider playing this in Commander. It's just too narrow for
if you're running a Hate Bear kind of deck, this is Hate Bear the artifact. So, like, legit.
It's got its uses. It depends on what kind of meta you play in, I guess. You know, if a lot of people are playing artifacts, maybe you feel like sliding this into a couple decks.
Everyone does run artifacts, and this would shut off equipments. This would shut off tap effects, like we're saying. This will shut off commander effects. It kills combos. It can kill infinites. So, I mean, it makes sense. It's a way to preserve yourself. Again, if you're not using artifacts, if you're using Super Friends and artifacts can potentially hurt you more than help you, put it in. It's worth a shot.
Yeah.
But moving on to number 2, the second most expensive card, and this one's a more recent one. It's called Lotus Veil, and it will grant you its power for $21 if you're willing to capture it. And it reads as a land, when Lotus Veil comes into play, sacrifice 2 untapped lands or bury it, which means just put it into the grave. Yeah, sacrifice it. But it has the ability to tap and add 3 mana of any one color to your mana pool. Now that effect should read pretty similar to a card like Gilded Lotus, because it's Gilded Lotus to land, but Gilded Lotus doesn't make you sacrifice 2 lands. And this is clever in how Wizards changed it, because there are sacrificing lands once they enter, it has to sacrifice a land, but more often than not, you can tap it first, then sacrifice it, so you get a little bit added mana bonus.
Yeah, this doesn't let you get away with that.
No, and actually this card used to be around $3-4, and then it took a little notoriety and then skyrocketed.
It did.
And I mean, that honestly gives you a little bit of an idea of some of the stuff we found in the money, the hidden gems, because I mean, some of those cards are so cheap, but I could see them going up to being a couple bucks in no time flat.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to this card here. It's great for fixing mana. It's great at any kind of landfall deck or any kind of synergies with grave lands, something like a, I don't know, Crucible of Worlds.
Titania, the Gitrog monster, both really like
Life
this.
from the Loom, tons of stuff like that. So it works out really well in that realm. It's great for mana fixing, and I mean, like, is there anything else to it? It's just scary, more or less, just having all that power in one land and that cost, like, one strip mine.
Like, yeah, the only problem is if it gets destroyed, you're then out 2 lands for nothing, basically. And a third if you count this.
Yeah, and to replay it, you still have to play that sacrifice cost again.
Yeah.
And so it's risk and reward, but I mean, it's not bad. It can do stuff on its own.
Definitely not an every deck sort of card, or probably even a most deck sort of card. But like we were discussing, there are certain places where this is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a reason why it's one of the money cards of this set.
And it also is a home for like commanders who like are Grenzo, where it's like you could steal something where something has an activate ability, but have no way to use that to create that mana.
And it gives you any mana you want.
So this is a way that would be like good for decks that try to be 5-colored but really aren't, like a Send Triplets deck, for example.
Right.
But enough of this card. I mean, do you have anything else to say about it?
No, not really, but I have a lot to say about this next one. Number 3 on our list of money cards for $19 is another land, Winding Canyons.
Classic card.
Yes, this is a just generic land that taps for 1 colorless mana, or you can tap it and pay 2 mana. Until the end of the turn, you can play creatures as though they had flash. So at any time, you could play an instant. Now, it kind of goes without saying, this is obviously very, very good. Being able to play things with flash is just really good. Having that ability on a land, again, as I've said before many times, without wasting a spot in your main deck is crazy good.
I mean, and you would even waste a spot for this. People run Vidalcan Ori. They run Leyline of Anticipation.
Yep.
And, I mean, those cards are around the same cost as this card. So, like, people are willing to pay that much money for this. The thing that makes this, like, better than Leyline is the same thing that we see with Vidalcan Ori. This can go into any deck. And it is only limited in its scope to creatures, which is its downfall compared to something like an Alchemist Refuge.
Right.
But that's mana intensive. You need to have 2 Simic, and if you're not running either of those colors, you're not running that land.
Yeah, exactly. This is like, it's a sneak attack, or it's an Alchemist Refuge. It's like all kinds of things just rolled into one land. And it even gives you mana, too. And it doesn't even come into play tapped, which is crazy good value.
Even if this thing didn't produce mana, you would still run this. Like, if it's just like 2 mana to do that, sure, you would do that. But it passes the vanilla test and gives you an incredible effect to ignore certain rules. This is a mythic. If this was if they printed Mythic back then or reprinted this would be a Mythic rarity.
I agree. This is really, really good.
And the reason why this is so much money is it hasn't been reprinted. And people actually who've played Magic for a long time have regretted not picking up this card when it was like $5 and people just had excess of it. It's, again, another card that's jumped up in price that is just incredible.
And we continue as the game goes on to see more and more utility with flash cards. So... yeah, just going to continue to get better.
Totally. But moving on to another card. And this one isn't a land this time. It is going to be an enchantment called Pendrell Myths. And I believe I pronounced that one right.
Yes, you did.
Thank goodness. It costs around $16.50 for an enchantment. And it has a mana cost of 4, meaning 3 generic, and a blue. And it reads, each creature gains during your upkeep, pay 1 generic. Or pretty much destroy/sacrifice this creature. So this is kind of like a tabernacle on a enchantment versus a land, except there's no cumulative upkeep. This is just a continual paying of 1.
Yep.
So it is kind of unique to see this in blue because it's kind of a board wipe. This isn't a true board wipe because once this enchantment is gone, and they can keep prolonging it by using mana, but if they have to play other stuff and they have to like let it go, that creature will then die. And blue doesn't typically get something that involves creatures being died this way.
No, we definitely see this ability much more in white these days, but this is kind of where it started out. And paying 1 per creature may not seem like much at first, but once you get more creatures on the board, having to spend that mana every turn just to keep the creatures that you have can start getting really annoying. And especially against a token deck, this is potentially devastating because they won't be able to pay enough to keep up with all their creatures.
Yeah, they're going to definitely be regretting that strategy on that.
Yeah, and also this is probably best, I think, in a more Voltron style deck where you maybe only play like 1 or 2 creatures in play at a time. So then it'll obviously hurt all the other players much more than it's hurting you.
That's true. I mean, again, if you're going narrow versus wide, definitely going narrow, you're going to have to obligate less mana. But however, typically those decks are kind of trying to speed themselves up as best they can. So slowing yourself down might not also be an optimal play there. But again, you would be playing this more or less as a board wipe. This would be Blue's Wrath of God, more or less. It's a very slower, more methodical way of doing it, but it will be annoying. It's that mosquito that's constantly just zapping you a little bit more and more.
Yeah, it doesn't even really hurt you, though, if you're only playing one creature on play, so you pay one every turn. Big deal. It's not going to stop you from doing anything else you want to do.
Yeah, and that's where you see Magus of the Tabernacle or Tabernacle of the Land itself, because that has the cumulative upkeep, increasing the cost, making it so that everything will eventually die.
Yeah.
So, and that's why that one costs a lot more mana than this. But anyway, moving on to another card. I believe it's another land we got here.
It is, once again, going back to a land for number 5 on our list. It's called Scorched Ruins, and it's $16. And once again, when Scorched Ruin comes into play, sacrifice 2 untapped lands, or bury, sacrifice, Scorched Ruins. You can tap it to give you 4, count 'em, colorless mana. That is pretty intense for a land, again.
But you didn't count them.
Well, it's like Lotus Veil, really, except it's colorless, and it does even more work. Like I was saying, same deal as Lotus Veil, good in pretty much the same places for pretty much the same reasons, but a loss is potentially high, as we discussed with that one.
It is. And it's the same kind of thing. It's just more or less, do you want colored mana or colorless? And you're getting the net difference. It's kind of like Phyrexian Altar versus
Ashnod's
Altar right there. Which one's better? It's almost the same thing. Again, it all depends. Do you need more mana or do you need specific mana? But again, they both have their homes. Same kind of thing as we said with Lotus Veil. Those decks are going to love it. This can also go in like an Eldrazi deck, more or less, like anything that's colorless.
Yeah.
So it gives you that boost. I mean, you're willing to lose 2 ways because, I mean, it's like getting another Temple of the False Gods out almost.
Yeah, it basically gives you a boost of 2 mana just by playing it, so...
But you're not going to get
pretty intense.
Yeah, but you're not going to get the grave interactions like you will with in green or in black or something like that. But again, a card to take note of. It does work, just never been reprinted.
Yeah, very interesting.
But number 6, we're moving away from a land to a card called Firestorm, and it costs $15 for a 1-drop red instant that reads: choose and discard X cards. Firestorm deals X damage to each of X target creatures and or players. So there's a lot of X's there. And none of them are people you've dated. But anything about that is none related. So pretty much how this card works is you reveal so many cards. So if you reveal 1 card, you're going to deal 1 damage to 1 target creature. If you reveal 4 cards and discard them, you deal 4 damage to 4 different creatures of your choice. So it scales really nicely. But again, if you're not willing to use a lot of cards for this, it's not going to do much for you.
Right, but keep in mind this can also hit players, which makes it that much more valuable. And even potentially paying for like one card, this one, and then discarding a couple of cards from your hand, essentially consider, you know, paying mana for and playing them. That's going to do that much damage to that many targets. That's a really good deal.
Well, look at the dream scenario, right? Let's say you have a full hand, you cast this. So, I mean, ideally, that means the max that you're going to get is 6 cards.
Right.
So it means, 6 cards to 6 damage to 6 targets. So if you have 3 players, they're going to get 12, both. All 3 of them are going to get 12 in the max scope of things. That's not exactly a lot for losing your entire hand. So, I mean, but again, for spot removal on the field, it's a little bit more advantageous.
Yes.
It's not as mana intensive as something like, I don't know, I mean, I can't name one off the top of my head. I'm sorry about this one, but like Wrath of the Gods isn't one?
Yeah, like Anger of the Gods.
Anger of the Gods. Yeah, that's
go.
one like right there where it's more or less the amount of mana you put into it. Or like even like a Banefire, for example. Now I actually have real examples. This is helping, I know. But this is one that's not mana based, which is nice, but it has a cap. So, and then, no, you're going to be yelling at me in the comments, well, if you're using some sort of Izzet deck that draws a lot of cards and you can make sure your hand constantly doesn't have a max count due to, like, I don't know, a Thought Vessel on the field, yeah, sure, you'll get more value out of this. But again, you're losing so much at that cost. You would only play this if it's a game ender with that many cards.
Well, or if you had a deck that really synergized with this kind of strategy, this plays really well with Hellbent cards, where it's better if you empty your hand. Plays really well with Madness, too, because this is only 1 mana, and you can pay pretty much all the Madness costs of the cards you discard.
That's true. I mean, it would work that, or if you're using stuff to double the damage, like a Furnace of Wrath
Exactly,
or something
yeah.
like that. Or, I mean, Perforos would probably love this deck.
Yeah,
this
this
a
is
lot.
this is an older version of there's a newer version of this in the Shadows over Innistrad block, Nahiri's Wrath, which is 3 mana, but actually like much more powerful than this card because it revolves around converted mana costs. Still though, this is definitely not for every deck, but very interesting sort of card that if you play like Madness strategies especially, you might want to consider this.
I didn't even think of those mechanics interacting with it. I just thought it was standalone, but you're right. That could be, I mean, that's probably why it is worth a little bit more in that regard, too.
Yeah,
But
1 mana for all the Madness triggers you can want plus damage. Pretty good.
as long as you got the mana for it,
and
you
it's
can
an
do
instant. And it's an instant too, so yeah. Not bad.
All right. I'm a little more swayed to it, but
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of discarding your whole hand either, but still. Yeah.
but Red loves it.
Oh yeah,
Red
definitely.
loves it. But moving on to number 7, I think this one's in your bag.
Yes, it is, and this is going to be Peacekeeper, $14.50, and it's a creature, 1/1 white creature that costs 3 to play, 2 colorless and 1 white. And during your upkeep, you can either pay 2 mana, 1 colorless, 1 white, or sacrifice Peacekeeper. And it just has a blanket effect. Creatures cannot attack. I see this around all the time, but I don't think I've ever seen anyone actually play this card in a game of Magic.
I mean, you could.
Kind of cool, though.
It really is, because, again, it's not cumulative upkeep. You can do this, and it's not like it's something that's going to really tax you down. 2 mana, you just can't be in a brawl, pretty much.
Yeah, like nobody's creatures can attack.
And that ends a lot of decks, because, like, again, I'll bring up someone like Alesha. That's an attack trigger-based deck right there. And if those decks need to go off, they're dead. Like, the chances of them getting their effects off, there might be something to kill this card, but they're dead.
Yeah, cards that shut off the combat step entirely are pretty rare. Like, there's a Stonehorn Dignitary, there's Blazing Archon.
And they're so
there's
powerful.
Silent Arbiter sort of does, but not really.
It doesn't. You can still get the trigger if you need it. But again, I mean, it's at a bigger cost.
Yeah, but just
still.
for 3 mana to just completely shut off combat is pretty awesome.
Well, Zergo Helm Smasher, right? Where it's like when it attacks, destroy everything. This laughs in his face like crazy.
Oh yeah, and of course you do have to pay a minor upkeep cost to keep this around.
But
it's pretty.
Commander, it doesn't matter if you're doing modern or standard or anything when this card originally was coming out in. Yeah, more of a problem paying that. But
this is also a small creature, so it can kind of just be killed pretty easily. But still.
Or recurred easily.
Yeah,
this is something Revelar can totally be like, hey.
And Sun Titan and all that good stuff. So yeah, like I said, I've never seen this played, but I'm kind of surprised that I haven't, because this is a pretty powerful effect to have on a small creature like that.
Or a Super Friends deck. Like this would love that. But also,
definitely would.
White cares about attacks, so it's kind of unusual seeing this in white to stop those, like condemning cards like that. Pretty much where it's like, target attacking, target a blocking creature. I mean, it's kind of self-deprecating a little bit, but I mean, I'll take it. I have no problems with this card beyond that.
No, I like it.
Well, moving on to number 8, we're looking at an artifact that costs $12. It's called Mana Webb, and it is a 3-drop, and it reads, whenever any land target opponent is... I'll restart that one, my bad. Whenever any land target opponent controls is tapped for mana, tap all lands he or she controls that can produce any type of mana that land can produce. All right, that's very choppy, very wordy. Kyle, you articulate way better than I do in layman's terms.
Well, basically, if I'm understanding this correctly, when you play it, you have to pick an opponent that this works on. So it doesn't work on every single player, just one person, and not you, which is pretty nice. But basically, whenever they tap a land for mana, say they tap a land that gives any color for black, for example, they then have to tap all lands they control that could possibly produce black mana. So this is very kind of interesting. And it's not just because at first I was like, oh, this is great against monocolor decks for obvious reasons, because they're going to be playing a lot of basic lands.
Right.
But not just there necessarily. I mean, if you're playing a 5-color deck, think about how many lands you're running that can produce, theoretically, any color of mana.
Yeah.
So if you tap your command tower, you're already then tapping down all your other lands that could make mana in that specific color, which is probably many of them. So,
And dual lands, those will all go in tandem. Tri-lands.
geez, yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, and
Weird.
you don't really see the basics too much. Again, if you're in a mono, you'll be safer. Or less. That's a great discussion about this. Is this better on an opponent that's using one color or multiple?
Yeah, it's a pretty open-ended discussion there. And it seems like this is a War's Toll type effect, being like, if you tap mana, you have to tap all of your mana, that sort of thing. It's an all-or-nothing type of effect. But because it's an artifact, it's obviously open to more decks.
3-drop, it's cheap.
Yeah, and for the same reasons as War's Toll is good, it shuts down control decks. Because if they want to play stuff on their turn, they're likely not going to have anything open to stop you come your turn. These cards are always good against control and counter-based strategies like that.
I mean, the only deck that it wouldn't be would be Krufix, because it'll store the mana, or like Omnath, who Locus of Rage, DOG one.
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
Or not, Locus of Rage is the
Mana,
same.
yeah.
Yeah, Locus of Mana, my bad. But if they have some way to store it, sure. But again, you wouldn't choose that opponent. Like, you'd have to be playing against everyone who's using that commander, and I mean, it's kind of odd in that regard.
This is a very strange card. Again, something that could actually be really powerful if anyone actually played it.
I think it's more annoying. You're ruining the tempo of a player, and that in turn, like, they're gonna get used to it, or they're gonna figure out how to get around it. Sure, like a mana maze, for example.
Yeah.
But they're still gonna have to jump through hoops for their own cards to be played, and.
Right.
It's like one of those things, like if somebody's going to wheel your hand, like with a Teferi's puzzle box, you are choosing the best option out of all of your options, and you're settling for it. Making a player go down to that level is grueling and, again, cruel. But for 3 mana, you could take it, and you could even clone this, like with other stuff, like create more copies of it.
Yeah. To target other players, yeah.
That'd be crazy.
Yeah, very interesting card. Intriguing. I can understand why it's a money card. Very rare. I haven't seen this card around a lot.
Yeah, put a mechanized production on this.
Yeah, that too.
Or Clever Impersonator. I think I'm liking this card a little bit more right now. But all right, before I get in trouble, all right, so that was mine. So you take number 9.
All right, well, let's move on to our number 9 on this list. For $10, it's another land, and this one is Gemstone Mine. And this card comes into play with 3 mining counters on it. And to tap it, you tap it and you remove one of the mine counters from it, and you get 1 mana of any color. And if there are no mining counters on Gemstone Mine at any point, you have to sacrifice it. So this is pretty much a vivid land that can...
Vivid?
Yeah, exactly. This is a vivid land.
Don't bring it down to that level.
Oh, they're fine.
It's a depletion counter command tower.
Well, it's not even that good because it doesn't make 2 mana. It just makes 1.
Oh, Kyle.
It's much more like a vivid land.
Vivids are so bad.
They are not bad at all. However, the bonus to this is that it comes into play untapped. You can immediately use it, which is pretty nice.
It is what vivid lands strive to be.
Oh, yeah, obviously. But this is also kind of risky because if you play it, if you play it early in the game, you're only going to get 3 uses out of it before you then have to sacrifice it, which is kind of pathetic, really. However, I will say where I've seen this card a lot is in Atraxa decks. Obviously, it shines there because any deck where you can consistently proliferate those mining counters, this becomes an awesome card.
Or anything that proliferates in general. If you're using an effect deck, this would work well with that as well. And it's clever that they said that it has to be a gemstone counter because there are ways to put counters on other things. And if it was just a counter, whenever this card didn't have any counters on it, then it was sacrificed, this card would be even more money.
Right, yeah. And this is, like I said, mainly good because it comes into play immediately available to use.
Yeah, it feels bad getting it early game, but not exactly because you get the color fixing you want. And late game, it's not as important. Like, you could save it and wait till when you truly need the mana, and it will last. It'll be around the field much, but it doesn't really count as a land drop because you wouldn't be utilizing it. So it's a purgatorial land which has its own, like, again, specific plays, and it works. But again, you would see this in more or less 5 color. Well, I feel.
Not unless you proliferate it a heck of a lot. Well, in my opinion, unless you proliferate, this is not worth playing.
It's another command tower. It's a
that
vivid...
works 3 times.
It does work 3 times, but again, you're not being hurt on land, or not hurt on land. You're not being hurt on mana like you would be with like a City of Brass or a Mana Confluence. Now, again, there's other lands that can be better than this one and don't go away. This is an interesting land for what it does, and like the proliferating, you're saying it does work. But again, just getting 3 uses out of this card is fine. You don't need to go through all those bells and whistles.
I don't know. I still don't like it that much, honestly. Like I said, unless you've got a way to consistently replace those counters, there's not much point to playing this card at all.
I guess, unless...
I'd rather have a Vivid Land.
Unless you're able to make it so it can produce other mana. So, like, if you're trying to produce 5 color, play a Chromatic Lantern. Use the other effect and not remove a depletion counter.
Well, sure.
Or
those
an
are very
Urborg.
few and far between, though.
Well, but there are other ways to make it so this thing can get around from removing a counter. So it's not also just limited in that scope.
Yeah, I mean, it's not bad, but very, very niche card at best.
Fair enough. But moving on to number 10.
Speaking of niche cards, I don't even get this one.
Oh,
Why
I like
is this
this.
a money card?
I'm taking this one. It's
All
called
right.
Goblin Bomb. It costs $9, and it has a 2-drop enchantment cost of a generic and a red. And it reads, during your upkeep, you may choose to flip a coin. Target opponent calls heads or tails while the coin is in the air. If the flip ends up in your favor, put a fuse counter on Goblin Bomb. Otherwise, remove a fuse counter from Goblin Bomb. Lastly, remove 5 fuse counters from Goblin Bomb, sacrifice it, and it deals 20 damage to target player. I like this. I'm just saying it. I enjoy this card. It's goofy, it's red, it's literally trying to get the matches and fuses to ignite this bomb. And, I mean, nothing's better if you keep choosing the same person over and over again. They get it wrong every time, and then you target it at them. That's just insult to injury. And it doesn't cost any mana to do this. It just sits there, turn 2, start it going. It's on your upkeep, sure. No one's really going to waste a counter spell on this. No one's going to blow it up inconsequentially, because they could even politic their way out of being targeted. And this can be a kill shot in Commander if you have ways to double the damage, like we say Red has access to. This would be a 40 damage in one shot with Furnaces of Wrath or anything else that's out there. So it's, I say, viable. Not very plausible to have happen, but it's viable.
I don't know. That's a stretch. There's so many preconditions that have to happen to make this card good. This is a big no from me. This is like all the worst things in Magic
This
in
is
one
where
card.
you and I
Chance? No.
Damage? Win con?
Not an instant kill? No, thank you. 20 damage is only half your life in a game of Commander. So what was the point of all that work? You're not going to kill somebody.
Still monumental because, all right, it's going to take 5 turns for this to go on. So let's say you play it out on turn 2. Turn 7, if all goes according to plan, this is going off, right? However, probably won't. Realistically, it probably won't, right? If we were to do our like probability theory on this and everything else like this, let's say it takes you to turn 10, right? It's pretty late in the game. People have been established. Board wipes have gone off. And this is probably just sat there. No one's been like, all right, thank goodness I got Reclamation Sage. I need to destroy this Goblin Bomb. Like, no one's going to be thinking that because they're going to be safe. But
give me a Doomblade any day of the week over this.
Nope. But anyway, the point that I'm bringing up is at that late in the game, it's very likely people will have 20 life. So it doesn't matter if they can reach 40 or not. The only thing is if they're fighting against a life gain deck. Most people will be around 20, 25 life. And this can kill. This is a thing that takes time. Now, again, proliferating, I know you're going to say Traxa, but it doesn't have red.
Well, right. The only plausible way this is in any way good is if you were proliferating the heck out of these counters.
Yes.
Then you don't have to depend on the chance effect, and then it might be good, maybe.
But again, it would still take a while to get.
Yes.
But at that point in the game, this is a kill spell.
Yeah. A mediocre card is a mediocre card. You can only put so much lipstick on this pig. I am not
First
a
of all,
fan.
you put enough lipstick on a pig, the whole pig's red, and then you can put a different layer of lipstick on there because now you have contrast with those colors.
Yeah, well, bad card is a bad card. I'm sorry.
A pig covered in lipstick is amusing no matter how you spin it, Kyle. And that's exactly what this card is. It is a lipstick pig, and it's a red card, which means it already has lipstick on it inherently. How do you think it got that color? I like it. It's not meant to be in a goblin deck, even though its name insinuates such. It's a goofy card.
It's maybe a flavor win, but not much of a win in any other department.
I would love this in a Zedru deck. Honestly, you play this, you steal an enchantment, and you give them the potential of going around and being like, hey, I can do something with this. And you can grow the counters organically that way around the table.
I actually like that because you gave them a basically useless card and you're getting something out of it.
No, but they can harvest that bomb for you to then steal later and then pluck it off.
At best, maybe.
I think this is totally, it's a chaos card. It's 100% a chaos play, and if you like your chaos plays, and I enjoy them, and I hope you guys out there as well, this is a chaos card. It does so much. I don't know if it's worth $9, but it's probably because it hasn't been printed, and there's got to be something we're missing about this. Or you're missing, because I'm having so much fun. I've been thinking about this card for like a minute right now, so this is great.
I'll just let you be positive about it because I have no positive words for this.
Come on, be a guidance counselor. Where's your inner school teacher mode? But anyway, that's concluding our money cards that we have seen in Weatherlight. Hopefully you enjoyed them. I enjoyed all of them. And so next week we're going to be going into our ranking of Weatherlight.
We will indeed. And of course, you can always find more from us on our social media pages. We've got Reddit, Tapdown, Facebook, and Twitter. We're all at the handle MTG TheCardPool on all of TheCardPool on all of those. Our email is mtgthecardpool@gmail.com. Remember, on social media, we're just TheCardPool.
And you can find all those links down below if we did confuse you by any chance from that. But also, let us know, did you like the video? Give us a like, subscribe if you think we're doing something funky, and comment if you think that we're missing stuff on any of these cards, or if Goblin Bomb is the bomb.
Or if we're just right.
Just
one or the other.
If you like it, just say Goblin Bomb in the comments below, and I just want to see that thing grow so Kyle could just have to take note. But anyway, until then, I'm Stu.
And I'm Kyle.
And we'll see you next time
at the Card Pool.